If you love Keir Starmer, you might want to turn off now. His intentions were to help improve the country as a whole, but he's f***ed up massively. Let's deep dive some of the actual points, like the ID being met with probably the most backlash.
It doesn't make sense on any level.
So our farmers are pissed, and rightfully so.
And they'll complain years down the line that we haven't got food security. We have to bring farming back, and then the farmers are going to go, cough.
Read the fucking room. Starmer, get out. Isn't it sad to see what state we have now found ourselves in with the just continuously bad leadership in the UK? And what a sad sight that we've now become as a country, as what once was one of the biggest or the largest empire that any civilization has ever known. And now we're being ran by bumbling Mr. Keir Starmer, who can't get a clear sentence out.
He's just shocking. I mean, was he the most hated man in Britain by an absolute landslide? And that's saying a lot, because there's a lot of people that we don't like, or that most people don't like, but he's winning by a mile.
I think you put yourself in a position of being hated. And look, to give him the only slack that I will cut him in this entire episode. So if you love Keir Starmer, you might want to turn off now. But for me, I think it's being put into a position of huge pressure, so many eyeballs on you, and any decision that you get wrong or right now is met with scrutiny. So you can never please all of the people all the time. You can do one thing and some people are going to love it, and you can do another and so many people are going to hate it. And the reality is, unfortunately, that is the position of leadership, and it's a position of, in our country, apart from the king or queen, the highest position of leadership that you can be in. So that scrutiny is to be expected. But unfortunately, we're living in an age now where everybody is so divided that any decision that gets made is met with huge backlash, regardless of whether you feel like you're doing the right thing or you're doing the wrong thing. So the only part of, and it's a small amount of
just a sprinkle
of credit that I will give him, is that he's taken the position on, and I do believe that his intentions when taking the position on were to help improve the country as a whole. Cut the niceness, but he's fucked up massively. And he continues to fuck up quite literally daily. And the sad reality is that he's pissed off everybody. And now we're at a stage where, because of the policies and things that he's added and changed and brought in, he is now upset not only the working class, which is quite literally his demographic, but we knew he was going to upset the middle and upper class, the business owners and those people. But he's also upset pensioners, farmers, the entirety of England now, by all accounts, with the, like I said, the working class with regard to the freeze on income tax thresholds. And I just don't understand what his mindset is when it comes to making these decisions, because when it comes to the next election, he's going to lose by a landslide. And like you said, he's the most hated person, certainly the lowest performing prime minister we've had regarding approval ratings ever. And surely as a leader, you would look at that and start to make some changes where you listen to the people. And I think that's unfortunately where we found ourselves as a country and as leaders, is that now the leaders are just going so far away from what the people want, and rather than listening to the people. I think it's time for a bit of a revolution stroke uprising, isn't it?
Tell me about it. I mean, the only other thing that I'd give him, kudos for is that he's not stepped down. I mean, whether or not he can or can't, but I mean, I suppose he's hanging on in there, even though everyone wants him to leave. But it's like, we know people that are farmers, we know people that are old, and it's just anyone I've ever spoke to, is just no one's ever said, you know what, he's doing a great job. I'm so glad he got in. Everyone's changing their stance on Labour. I mean, the Green Party is now flying in the polls, so I mean, that tells you something serious is wrong. But, he's just, I think he went in, and because it was just, everyone hated the Tories so much. It's like everyone's kind of all over here hating the Tories, and now it's like everyone's moved over here to then hate Labour. And, no one's doing, like you say, what the people want, So they went in with a manifesto. They weren't specific on what they were going to do. So now they're just throwing anything that they want to throw at the wall, seeing what sticks. And like we were saying on the car on the way here, there was the ID, which has been overturned now from what you were saying. I'm like, it's just, I'm glad because I don't want that in place. But it's just, he flip-flops all over the place.
Well, let's deep dive some of the actual points like the ID, because the ID was one of the things that has been met with probably the most backlash amongst probably the farmers' tax or inheritance tax removal. So we'll jump on that after. But this digital ID is, again, apparently used, and this is what we always are now becoming wiser to as a general public, thanks to social media. So it is one of the blessings of social media that it is in place, because these petitions, these things or policies that are being put into place, like the digital ID, get massive viewership and they get massive coverage away from the mainstream media. And we then get to look at it as a society and decide amongst ourselves whether it's something that we want. And that wasn't possible before social media, because it was generally what was being covered in the mainstream media, on the news or on the radio or on the TV. And now social media has come into play. You get to see so many different people's opinions, but also come together on a specific topic. And it got so many signatures. The abolishment of the digital ID is that he's now been able to backtrack. And his position was to make it mandatory for all children born after, I can't remember the year, but in the next few years, it would be mandatory for any child born to have. And he was trying to look to make it mandatory. He was hopping back and forth the points. And again, go back to him as a leader and his incompetence. His sackless type of leadership leads to him pussyfooting around different points where he'll say one thing to one person and then a completely different thing to another about just this even one topic, where it's like, we're not going to make it mandatory. It will be mandatory. And then bumbling about to another person, well, it will only be mandatory under these conditions. And it's, again, he hasn't got a clue. And that's the thing that upsets people more than everything, is because of the inability to stay vigilant on a single policy that he's making. And this is just a prime example.
It's because anything he's ever doing is just not based on what the majority want. He's catering to all the minorities. And it's like, that's not what the majority wants. And obviously the majority get pissed. So, he's got to just have a long, hard look in the mirror and see, are you happy with what you are doing, Keir? He needs to have a word with his mom or something, because surely she can't be impressed with what's going on.
Well, remember, his dad was a toolmaker and his mom was a nurse.
Yeah, exactly.
As he tells everyone.
And he's screwing over both of them.
He's one of the people. Keir, he's one of the people.
I mean, we know toolmakers from our business, and every single one of them thinks he's a wanker. Yeah, so,
he's failed miserably, hasn't he? But look, let's on the actual digital ID, I think, looking at the point in itself, because what were your objections to the digital ID and what are your thoughts around it?
So I just don't agree with any of this draconian style lockdown and complete police state where no one really has a great deal of freedom. I mean, what are we to do when, our passports, our IDs, or like our bank accounts are all centralized under one location? One, the government and like the NHS, as we know, has been hacked on numerous different occasions. So what happens when China and Iran and all these, enemies of the UK go, oh, bloody hell, well, we can get all these people's data if we just hack through, these systems, which I can't imagine are that robust because it's happened that many times. So that's already one big problem. The other big problem, which I actually don't understand anyway, they're all, saying that the right are fascist and far right and all this sort of stuff. Now, if you look at the polls, they're likely to get in next. So they're going to essentially put this in place, and by the time it's fully ready, you're going to be handing it over to a load of fascists in their opinion. So why on earth would they want to do that? So it doesn't make sense on any level. And, we only have to look at somewhere like China, where they have, scores on, how you are as a person within the country.
Your status as a
citizen. Your
citizen.
status, that's it. So if you say anything online or you say things by email, everything's on WeChat, everything's recorded, everything's on camera. If they don't like what you've said, you can get debanked. You won't be able to get mortgages. You won't be able to open bank accounts. All these things are off limits.
Booking flights, traveling, leaving the country.
And no matter what you think about, digital ID, that allows a government to have an insane amount of power to then just flip you off. I mean, it's happened again, agree with him or disagree with him. Nigel Farage was debanked. Now, that kind of process becomes very easy. So all that would happen is if you get the left in power, they'd debank all the right and knock all the right off and lock them up like they're doing at the minute. And then when the right are in power, they'll just do it back to the left. And then we end up in some sort of, Stasi government where people are just getting arrested left, right and centre. And it becomes a political joke. That's my
No, you've summed it up brilliantly, and it is what is happening, this draconian level of policing where it comes to tweeting, comes to making comments, because he's on about banning X, another massive move towards fascism, which apparently is only for the right. And look, I don't like throwing these words around because they are buzzwords that get people to feel and start to incite general anger and aggression towards people. But when you are literally cancelling free speech for people, and the outrage comes when people are getting media coverage for, and it's not, again, I go back to it, it's not mainstream media coverage. It's being covered by smaller news outlets that are on social media, and you can see the rise in popularity from people like GB News and and LBC, to be fair to them as well, is getting popular with the left. So both of them, because they're a bit more unbiased and they're sharing the stories that the mainstream media aren't actually looking into. And when you're now seeing stories of people that are being arrested, taken from their homes, whether they're mothers, whether they're senior citizens, whoever they might be, clearly innocent people that have never committed a real crime in their lives, quite literally being arrested, thrown into the back of a police car, handcuffed, and taken to a cell for processing because of a tweet or because of a Facebook status is mental. And then that alongside the general level of outrage when we are seeing crimes committed by immigrants, illegal immigrants, or different ethnicities that have come in from different countries and are committing crimes against our people and not getting a level of punishment that fits the crime, or even residents of the UK that aren't seeming to be getting punished or are committing really nasty crimes and their sentences are minor. I saw someone that got 2 years the other day. I watched this video of a guy ramming this bike off a motorcyclist off his bike. He just went mental and he got a 2-year ban and a 12-month sentence. And it's like, it's attempted murder. Like, if he died, which he easily could have done, you're getting 12 months, and that's less than people are getting for a tweet. And I just think that when people have now seen these stories, that's where the outrage is getting sparked. Code. I've just thought, how are people going to learn about business if they're not subscribed to the Brothers in Business podcast?
It's a really good point. They're going to need to subscribe.
Hit the button.
Please.
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 Well, the statistics are just frightening. The UK arrests more people in the world than any other country due to Facebook or, social media posts. It's literally not even close. It's like, we're like 5 times higher than the next highest country, and we're about 100 times at the minute more than Russia. Bearing in mind. Now, how can that be right when the UK was one of the founding countries of free speech and democracy and government and rule of law? I mean, I suppose that one maybe, it's the wrong rule of law, but, we're enforcing these things to such a level where, again, it's damaging free speech, and Elon Musk is not a man that's happy about that one.
I just think, like you said, Starmer, wake up on this particular topic. He has done a bit of a U-turn. Digital ID, no bueno. Stop with cancelling social platforms. Stop with arresting people. And they're logical things because, again, you're just pissing everybody off. No one is getting behind this whole rhetoric of you've said something mean on Twitter, so you're going to jail. No one gets behind that. I used to I used to understand the divide between what once was a general Labour government and a general Conservative government, where one is focused on the working people and focused on taxing those more heavily that have and giving it to those that have not or can't and struggle. And Conservatives more so of a more capitalist society of you get what you earn and you get to keep what you make. And that's kind of their mindset and keeping things in tradition. But now it's so far gone between that, and points are trying to be scored between each one. Like you said, it's now there's immigration problems and who wants to deal with that. And then you've got problems, like you said, now with the farmers, which is a massive one. And it's like, how is that aligned with what once was a Labour government by removing these farmers' inheritance tax? So for anybody that's not aware, if they've not seen all the tractors up and down the country in arms, throwing manure down the street, and rightfully so.
They're missing. They should be hitting Starmer with it.
I agree. I do agree. But they've removed inheritance tax for farms over £1 million, and they've now added a 20% levy on it. And they've said that we're going to give a 10% interest-free period on that. A 10-year interest-free period on that. And people are losing their minds because, using a case study that we obviously have ourselves close to home, where we've got close friends who own a farm, they are on their ass. They have got no free flowing income. They're living off the land. They live within a very, very frugal means, not to sort of take anything away. You know, they enjoy their lives. They love what they do, and their land is their life, and they love it, and they wouldn't have it any other way. They feel like they are rich in their environment and rich in their lifestyle, but they're not rich by any means of financial abundance. They've got, let's say, very little. They're not driving around in Ferraris. So throwing a 20% tax for these farmers, because most people hand these farms down. And the last time I looked, I don't know anybody that hasn't grown up on a farm that has decided, apart from Jeremy Clarkson, who has decided in recent time that I've spoken to and said, you know what I really fancy? Starting a farm and going into farming as a career, as a full-time career, to provide, to literally create and provide food for the UK. I don't know anyone that's doing that. It's not popular, which means it's a dying industry for our country. And again, it's something we've outsourced to everyone else. So our farmers are pissed, and rightfully so. But again, that would mean that massive 20% inheritance tax, if your land is worth 10 million, and a lot of these farms they've got a lot of land and they need it for the agriculture space. But if you're getting charged all of a sudden £2 million to be paid off, and you are barely earning over £50,000 in free-flowing profit from that farm, how the fuck are you meant to pay that back? And it just leads people to then having to sell the farms, which are going to be bought up by outside investment, and by all accounts, once again, destroying our agriculture and farming industry.
And then they'll complain years down the line that we haven't got food security and that we're too reliant on other countries. They'll go, we have to bring farming back. And then the farmers are going to go, fuck off. We're not interested anymore. We're not going back into farming now. We've got our nice air-conditioned offices. But people, like you say, they don't go into it. It's hereditary, and you go through it through your family, through your dad, through your grandparents. And these farms have been kept in, the family for generations. And it's like, they live off the land, they know the land. And again, when things like COVID hit, it's like, well, they obviously got a pass, rightly so, again, to actually continue farming, continue, producing food and getting the meat. Well, without any of the farmers, I'd love to have known what would have happened to our supermarkets that everyone loves, because I'm sure that would have been a massive reduction on capacity and how much food that would be going into the stores, which would have drove prices up even more, just because farmers aren't able to work properly. And if there's less farmers, again, that's just going to compound and going to get even worse.
Well, they had to make all the cheese and wine for Boris's lockdown parties.
Crackers.
So without them, there would have been no lockdown parties, of which we definitely didn't go to any.
No.
But no, it's a sad day for farmers. And so rightfully so, another thing they're pissed off at. Next group of people that is absolutely just buried alive is the pensioners, the over 65s, and the people that are desperate. And we talked about in an episode of just about setting goals, how important it is to be able to look long term and set yourself up for the day that hopefully comes where you are able to retire. And when that comes, you want to be able to have a nest egg. But a lot of people aren't fortunate through hardship. They might have had loss in their life. Our own Nan, for example, suffers with this. She lost her husband when she was in her 30s and he died very young in a car accident. And she hasn't got, she didn't have anything. And so to have a prime minister actively cancel a £200 to £300 cash credit for winter fuel to allow them to have heating in their homes. Again, I just can't understand the mindset towards accepting that when he's so keen on being able to find money and find funds for foreign aid in Ukraine and also for immigrants coming into the country or migrants coming into the country, however you want to call it. God forbid I use the word illegal. Refugees coming into the country. He finds money for them. But I don't understand again, and this is where I go back to Labour. It's like the working people, and they've worked all their lives and they haven't got the money to be able to afford these luxuries. And he's just taking it away. And again, mindset, and it go back to leadership. Read the fucking room. Who's gonna, in our entire country, if you did a poll in a room full of 100 people and said, should we, yes or no, take this winter fuel credit away from the over 65s? Can't imagine many people going, no, screw them lot, send them back to work. They haven't done enough after 40, 50 years of service and going through some difficult times. I mean, if you're at 70 now, rewind, that's born just after World War II. You've gone through all the rations, you've gone through the backlash of post-World War II England, but no,
back again.
Not good enough. Get your work boots back on because Keir says you're not getting your heating on unless you go and get a job. And I asked myself the logic and what goes into that decision.
Well, I actually remember, there was striking going on at a similar sort of time. And what the real slap in the face was that he took the money away from the pensioners and then gave it, I swear it was like train drivers again or something like that. But he gave like all the money back to just government workers in terms of a pay rise for like train drivers who are earning like, 50, 60, 70 grand, depending on what trains you're driving, or if it's the tube. I mean, it's even more. It's like 100 odd grand. And it's like, I don't think they need it as much as, Doris, who's 80 down the road. Fortunately not, but he seems to think they do. So.
Well, we've entered this sad reality where everyone wants, and I go to this sad state where nobody really now is too worried about the neighbour, the society as a whole. And Jimmy Carr, we talked about this and we put it up in our last episode. It was a really nice way of breaking down capitalism, socialism, communism. And it's like, well, everybody's pretty much a capitalist at home with their family and wants the best for themselves, the children, the people that are dependent on them. They want the most for their own family. And they might become a bit of a communist in their local community where it comes down to who they want to look after and they know the neighbour and they want their roads to be looked after. But then when it comes to the whole country as large, they're a bit like, well, fuck those liars.
Fuck those guys.
Fuck those guys. I'm not really bothered. So it's just this mindset of really, it's like, well, why are we moving so close to now really only caring? Our circles are getting smaller. Our neighbourhoods are getting smaller. Our communities are getting smaller. People don't work together and they don't speak to their neighbours and they don't care about who's got what. They only care about themselves. And that really then comes back into this mindset of this tax and all these other things that are happening. And I think a lot more people would be open to paying more tax, or happy to pay tax, or happy to see it if they saw the return on the investment, rather than the money being wasted or spent in shit they don't care about. They only see it being taken away. They don't see anything being added in. Are the roads good? Is the policing getting better? Are we feeling safer? Is the schooling system getting better? Are the roads getting better? Are the criminals staying out of jail, or staying in jail rather, for as long as they should? For as long as they should. But it's quite literally, is the NHS improving? Are the wait lists getting better? You know, fair play, I think they are coming down, but is the actual service being received getting better? No, it's going backwards. All these things are flip reversed. And at that point, you know something's wrong. When every single metric that determines a successful country is going quite literally the opposite direction that it should be in, the Titanic be sinking. And it is time.
We've hit the iceberg.
It's time to get on a lifeboat, or at the very least find a big door and make sure Rose can fuck off, because it's going down. And this is why everybody's leaving. It's why everybody's so upset and wants to get out of the country. And all these people, millionaires who are fortunate enough to have the free cash to be able to, and the assets to be able to sell up and leave and go somewhere else where it's smoother sailing. And call them cowards, call them whatever you want, but the reality is they're seeing the writing on the wall, and they're basically thinking Keir Starmer is not the person that's going to be able to steer the ship around. Never mind narrowly avoiding the iceberg. My man is quite literally beelining for it, and he's having a game of bumper cars.
Yeah, he's just, I mean, the thing is, what people don't realise is, you know, the top 1%, and that's just the 1%, that's like the billionaires and multi-millionaires, are paying like 40% of the tax. And it's like, you know, if you get 10% of them that leave, there's no wonder that taxes then have to go back up to fill the gap. So then more people in the top 1% leave, and then maybe some, you know, tens of millions of net worth type people. And then they leave, and then it's like, shit, we now need to put the taxes up again because those people are left. And it's not, because people forget, it's not just taxes on your income. Taxes are on everything that we buy. It's on stamp duty, any product, if they're buying a car, if they're buying you know, again, houses, or even sweets and chocolate. I mean, granted,
fuel,
that'd be a
cigarettes,
lot.
alcohol, VAT is on every single item.
There's 20% on everything that we buy. So it's like, you know, although they might not be clever with the way that they're doing and manoeuvring their personal taxes, you know, they're still paying a shitload of tax on everything that they buy. You know, if they're going to buy a jet, you know, still tax on it. So it's like hundreds of thousands of pounds of the tax. And I think that's what people miss when they say about tax the rich, because they just see, oh, well, they're meant to be paying 40% tax bracket and they're managing to get away with only doing like 20. But it's like, yeah, but they're still paying all the other things that then go into it. They're still paying for stuff.
Exactly. And it's, again, like you said, buying one house that's worth 10 million, the amount of costs that go into that, and then the builders and the repair work and the jobs that get generated and the money that gets put into the society through all the additional work that gets carried out. And again, this is the same logic that goes with football teams, and people say, how dare they earn so much money? All they do is kick a ball around. Not to get too much into it, but it's more about the amount of money that they generate through viewership, through sponsorship, through merchandising, through affiliations, through name of the actual club, name of the person, the individual has value. So it's not that they're getting paid an unfair proportion. It's this money's been funneled in by, you know, God above. It's been earned through the generation of it. And I just wish that, I think now for the future of where we're at, is that we could see more of where our money was going, because the UK is generating a great deal of cash. We're still, as far as GDP goes, you know, up there in the top 10 in the world. We make a great deal of money as a country, and we shouldn't be in the shit state that we're in. And I don't know who's going to come along to fix the issue. I really don't. Do I think Nigel Farage is going to come along and do a much better job? I think he's going to really fix some of the issues that the country is facing, and he's listened to the people on some of the core issues, where it certainly comes to immigration, small businesses, tax, and certain key areas that digital ID, freedom of speech, all those things. But I think then it's easy to say it because then on the flip side, the actual execution of those plans, like we've seen with Donald Trump and ICE, it's great saying it out loud, but the reality of bringing those plans to fruition, like deportation of people, isn't easy. And Trump,
well, we'll get into that.
He's pushing
into the deeper dive.
Yeah,
but
he's
I mean,
pushing the boat.
One thing's for sure: whoever comes in next, they couldn't do any worse, or you'd think anyway, than what's currently going on. But I've got a good thought experiment. Then I've got a question. So if I was to wave my wand and say that you're Prime Minister now, how would you try and turn the ship?
I think it's a case of immediately listening to the people. It's a reinvestment of the funds that we have got. So I'd need to have a better understanding of exactly what is being spent where, what proportion of our wealth. Obviously, one of the biggest spends is quite literally on benefits and social care for the community. So it's understanding where that's going. Again, with America, looking at what's been uncovered in Minnesota with the leering centers and the Somalian schools that are earning millions and millions, putting a stop to that. And then also putting some incentive schemes in place for people to come back into the country and start to look at wealth generation rather than just spending. Because I don't think I've heard a prime minister in the last 20 years talk about what we're going to do to make money. We've got the natural gases offshores. We're talking about clean energy with nuclear power that we're trying to bring in but not getting anywhere with. So that would be a big thing for me. And then when it comes to policies, it's just listening to the people. I have my own personal mindset of where I lean, which is more centre-right, which is traditional values. I do believe in capitalism. I do believe that we need to incentivize people to be able to find success through entrepreneurship and business and wealth creation and allow them to keep elements of that wealth, but also ensure that they're paying a fair share and being able to get people into work rather than trying to encourage people to stay on benefits and find a way for them to come out of that. And then most importantly, admit when they've made a mistake and backtrack and be happy to say, do you know what, I hold my hands up, that was wrong. I thought about this digital ID. Turns out, bad idea. We've spoken to
it's
people.
Never worked in the history of implementation.
I understand what you're saying. These were the reasons why I put it forward because of X, Y, Z. I can see now with the changes that we've put in place or with what we've listened to, actually, it's a no-go. I'm sorry, I'm not sorry for suggesting it. This was why I suggested it. We're going to change that, and thanks for sharing. And that is the thing that I've never heard maybe more than one or two politicians ever say. It's like, Joe, I got that wrong. And unless they're about to step down and it's time for them to go, then I've never heard it. And I think if we could take more accountability for ourselves as leaders, I have to do it when we run in our business, is admitting when we're wrong and learning from those lessons.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I echo the same sort of thing. And again, I look at it with capitalism. The way I look at it is, if you want something, I've got money to pay for it, and then I give you the money in exchange, and there's a fair, agreed upon exchange. With where we're going at the minute, and when you've got the government that's so big at the moment, they're essentially some shadowy figure in the distance, kind of looking at our transaction and go, no, you need to pay more, or actually you need to give more, and telling us how to do our transaction. And it's not liberty. It's not a way of doing things that we actually want to do. We're being told how to do it. And I think the freer we are, the better we are.
Starmer out. Get him out.
Fuck off.
We've had enough. Everyone's had enough. And I can see why. He's pissed everyone off. And I think good leadership is hard to come by. And we've not had a good leader. And we're not advocating for any which party to come forward, step in, step out. Apart from Starmer, get out. I think tough leadership is tough. And good leaders are hard to come by. And that's why they're remembered throughout history. And it's time for a good leader to step up and step into the position, because our country is in desperate needs for it. But what do we know? We're only sat here behind a screen, so we're here to do our best and just share what we think on certain subjects. So thank you very much for watching. Remember to hit subscribe, like the video, and we'll catch you in the next episode.